Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Up Close on METV. I'm Charles Clapsaddle, Station Manager for Manatee Educational Television. And it's our great pleasure to welcome back once more to discuss what's going on in Tallahassee and to hear about what's going on in our state from Representative Jim Boyd. Representative Boyd, I want to thank you again for taking time out of your schedule to give us some time to give us an update on what's going on. It's an early session this year.
It is, and thanks, Charles, for having me again. It's always a pleasure to be here with you and your viewers and to talk about what's important to our community and to the state. It is an early session this year. We start the second week of January 9th, and it's a 60-day session, so we finish up, I think, March 9th. We've had committee meetings throughout the fall, a couple weeks each month starting in September, and we're prepared for the session, and I think it'll be a good and productive session again this year.
And Representative, I must say right off the start, this is your last session because you term out in November of next year. It seems that it's gone by pretty quickly.
It has. I think back to some of the first times we chatted, even the interview that, or debate, or whatever you want to call it, that we had with our campaign when I first ran in 2010. And the time has flown by, but it's been a great privilege and honor to serve our community in this capacity. And I'm sure those that follow me will do as good or better a job than I've done, but it's been a real honor to serve.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, sir. But, we could, let's start as you go back in just a few short weeks back to in session. There's some issues that are facing the legislature, and one of those obviously is the budget. And that's a critical thing as you move forward in this legislative session.
Yeah, sadly, this year the budget is projected to be fairly tight. Hurricane Irma and the things that were surrounding that ate up a lot of whatever excess resources might have been available. But even without the storm, on an $83 billion budget, the surplus was only expected to be $50–60 million. So that's not much. And then the storm went through that and then quite a bit more. But I remember back my first 2 years in the legislature, we were $6 billion short.
Right.
And we figured out a way to manage that and to provide for Floridians' needs while still, balancing our budget as we have to do by Constitution every year.
Well, we know with a little shortfall, there's still some critical things that as you move forward that you're going to be looking into, and you and your colleagues in the legislature. And one of the key things that happened last year was kind of a separation between the House and the Senate. What do you see this year as you move forward? Do you think that sense of cooperation is going to be a little bit more evident?
Yeah, that's a good question, Charles. I believe it will be, and I'm always optimistic when we start that, we're all up there for the same reason, for the same purpose, and at the end of the day, we seem to all kind of coalesce and get our job done. Last year, it took a special session to do it, and I wouldn't suspect that'll be the case this year. One thing, it's an election year across the board, so people want to get back home and get back around their constituents and have a chance to tell their story. And I think that'll motivate some to finish strong and finish on time and in a cooperative manner. And that's what we're sent up there to do. So it's incumbent on us to really focus on that and what really matters to the people. And that's not stretching things out or arguing all session long. So I don't really see that as being a high likelihood this year. And
we must say that the Manatee County delegation, works very closely together. Senator Galvana, Representative Gruters. You have a great team of local legislatures here.
We do. I've been blessed and fortunate for my time throughout the legislature, and I'm on the Sarasota delegation as well. We've had good delegations that work well together, that cooperate, and are all in it for the right reasons. And as you look across the state, many of my colleagues across the state are in the same boat. I mean, everybody really understands what we're elected to do, and for the most part, we all try to get up there and do that.
Well, if I may, Representative Boyd, ever since you were elected, you've been given great responsibility because you're kind of a can-do individual. In your very first session, you were handed this insurance issue that you devised the legislation for, and was very helpful. This year, as you move in, one of the key issues, and you've spoken about this recently, is the workman's comp issue. And that's a very serious issue that's facing the state. And give us your take on that and what can be done.
Sure, and without getting too far in the weeds, because your viewers will fall asleep on this if I do. Workman's comp is critical to Florida and to businesses and to a thriving economy. Last year we had a 14.5% rate increase as a result of 2 Supreme Court decisions that changed the kind of the complexion of the work comp reform that was done back in 2003. Just to put it in perspective, since 2003 work comp rates have gone down over 60%. Last year, there's a 14.5% rate increase. This year, based on experience alone, there was about a 9.5% rate decrease, and that's a good thing. Next year, we expect the rates will probably start to trickle up because the court cases will fully apply at that point. So this year, I don't think much will be done in terms of trying to fix the problem or come up with a long-lasting solution. But in the following years, in the year, 2 years out, I think it's going to be an issue that the legislature will have to address and will have to get serious about. Otherwise, I would foresee rates going back up again, and we don't want that. First, we want we want injured workers to be taken care of, and then we want a competitive work comp environment so employers can afford the coverage to be able to be in business and ultimately take care of the injured worker on their staff that might have needs.
And I'm sure, Representative Boyd, that the leadership will kind of rely upon your expertise to kind of guide this legislation and to look at it and see what's going to be best for the state as you move forward.
Thankfully, I'm involved in it, and it is under the purview of my committee, the Commerce Committee, and Insurance and Banking is one of the subcommittees under our Commerce Committee. So I'll be intimately involved in it this year, and anything that would perhaps be an opportunity for us, I'll certainly be looking at.
And being the chair of the Commerce Committee, certainly a lot of responsibility and a wide variety of issues that are going to come face you. But you've always had that kind. Last year, you were the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, which is a very important committee. Tell us a little bit about the work that you did last year in Ways and Means.
I've enjoyed everything I've done in Tallahassee and been part of. Last year was probably the most fun I've had because it was giving taxpayers money back, and hard-earned dollars that they send to the state. We were able to give $182 million back. And since I've been in the legislature in 2010, I think we've cut taxes $7.5 billion. So that's not insignificant. So that was the sole responsibility of our committee. It looks at all the revenue that comes into the state of Florida, and then where are there ways where we can save Floridians money. And last year we were able to do that. So I was very proud of what we accomplished last year and had a really good time working on those issues.
And as you move forward this year as the chair of Commerce, a lot of the issues that are going to be facing you is how to bring in additional economic benefits to the state. Incentive programs, I'm sure, will be coming up again. What do you see on the horizon as you look forward to chairing the Commerce Committee?
Yeah, those are all issues that we'll be looking at. Commerce is our subcommittees are insurance and banking, energy and utilities, tourism and gaming, so as well as a couple others. And those are big issues. I think that this year there'll be no less issues. They maybe won't be quite as dramatic as we've had in the past because we're trying to get through the storm and the things that we need to do as a state in terms of policy and funding for that. And in fact, the Speaker commissioned a special select committee to deal with storm and related issues, and their recommendations will be coming out the first part of January. And at that point, the various committees within the structure of the Florida House will be looking at policy decisions that will help prepare us for future storms in terms of funding or infrastructure or anything kind of in between. So that'll all be going on this year as well.
And it's a very wise thing because we saw the devastation that was caused and the economic devastation as well. So obviously having that select committee look at that and see what policies and procedures can be put in place is going to be beneficial in the long run.
I think so. And it's, I think this past storm, as broad and as massive as it was, I think we did really well as a state. Lots of good things happened, and I think we were very well prepared as compared to maybe past years.
Right.
Does that mean we're perfect? No. We've got ways, different things we can do to improve, and everybody is looking at that. But I think overall, last year's this past storm was handled pretty well, but we can certainly improve, and that's what we're trying to do.
And if I may, Representative Boyd, I'd like to kind of switch gears because I want to recognize you for your efforts on behalf of the opioid crisis. This is something that you've been involved with for several years now, because you've seen this issue rise and become very, very detrimental to communities, to families, to the state itself. And one of the things that you've been responsible for and kind of led the thing was the mandatory minimum sentences for people that sell drugs laced with these opioid additives, the fentanyl and the carfentanil. Tell us a little bit about that and why you thought this was such an important issue. And also, as a follow-up to that, you have another bill that's going to be advancing as well. And tell us about that and why that's important.
Sure. Thank you for bringing that up, because all the things I've worked on in the legislature since I've been there, this is the one that I think is the most important and I'm most passionate about. This is killing our family members, it's killing our friends, it's killing communities, and it's horrific. And sadly, Manatee has enjoyed the distinction of one of the the biggest places in Florida for overdose and death over the past couple of years, and that's just not acceptable. Last year we did pass a bill that was a penalty bill for dealers and traffickers. This isn't talking about the addicts and the users that truly need help and need rehabilitation and therapy. In most cases, they don't need to be in jail. This one, if you have 4 grams or more of fentanyl, which is the deadly substance, you go to jail for 3 years, and then it ratchets up. And if you're a dealer and you are caught with, somebody buys a drug from you and you overdose, a felony murder penalty can be attached. In fact, we just heard recently from north of us, north of the Bay, the sheriff's office up there had a fairly large and significant bust. Their words were, before this law took place, the dealer would have gone to jail maybe for several months. As a result of this law, they could go to jail for several decades. So I'm very happy that the legislature and the supported it, and the governor signed it into law, and I was more than happy to be and glad to be the sponsor of that bill. This year, as I said last year, it's a multifaceted approach to the problem. Last year we dealt, with the worst of the worst among us, the traffickers and the dealers. This year it's more at some use and prescribing thoughts with doctors, and with healthcare providers. The PDMP, the drug monitoring program that is in place, tightening that up a little bit, where physicians that are prescribing opioids have to access that to make sure the person isn't already receiving perhaps the same
doctor shopping, so to speak.
Doctor shopping. We also our bill connects the PDMPs across state lines. So if somebody's in Alabama, let's say, and comes down into the panhandle of Florida because they've run out of options in Alabama, they can the prescribing physician can see right away that they were using that drug somewhere else. So those things, and then some continuing education for medical providers as part of it. And then kind of an aside line on that, the governor's proposed $50 million or so in funding for treatment and research and rehabilitation, different things. So that'll be a separate bill, but I'm looking forward to helping that as well, because we do know that those that are addicted to these drugs, it's a hard road to get out of that addiction, and they need our help and they need the community's help and support, and hopefully that we'll be able to do that as well.
And as you mentioned, right here in Manatee County, kind of the epicenter in this entire region, there's facilities such as Centerstone in Manatee County and others in Sarasota, that would need that money, could use that money to provide more beds, more services, and greater resources for those addicts who are going through this and help them through that terrible process.
Yeah, and we do, and thanks for mentioning that. We do have great facilities locally, and in some cases they're overwhelmed with the numbers of patients and folks that come in to need treatment from their facility. So we need to support them and help them as well. Ultimately, if we can get these drugs out of people's hands, and sadly, good people with, with an illness, with a acute injury, and there's a difference now between acute injury and treatment versus chronic, and we're not addressing in our bill the chronic pain, because those are people that have had an illness for a period of time and need constant medical attention and prescription intervention. This is for acute pain, so if something happened immediately, you broke your hip, something along those lines that you need. So that's where we're attacking the problem. But sadly, some of those people are, given large numbers of prescription opioids, and some get hooked on them, and so that's what we're trying to eliminate and to avoid. But want to be clear, we're not addressing those folks that have a need that is ongoing, that really is a debilitating illness that they need treatment for.
And hopefully, as that progresses through the legislature, you'll get feedback, from the medical community, from the care providers that are out there, saying how best that this could be applied. That we're continue to provide that education and resources for the people who are going through this terrible pain of addiction.
And we are. That's a great point. We are collaborating with the Florida Medical Association, various practice groups, orthopedic surgeons, different therapists, mental health and substance abuse facilities, the Department of Health and the Attorney General, and a variety of stakeholders in this, because there are a lot of issues that we need to think through. And our bill will be rolled out, I think, the first week of January, but that's not to say it's going to end up exactly the way it is. We're trying to improve it along the way. We think we have a pretty good start at it, but it'll be a work in progress, as you know.
And because of the fact that Manatee County has continued this under the mantle of being number one in not only Narcan addiction, but the use of Narcan to revive people, and the hats off to Sheriff Wells and his staff and for trying to stop those. But has to be a follow-up for individuals who are suffering. And I think this education money that's going to be available would be very beneficial to organizations like Centerstone.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's critical. And the sheriff has done a phenomenal job. I mean, they're faced with this every day.
Every day.
And there's different organizations that have provided some help for them with having actual Narcan injectors on their squad cars or their police cars, so when they roll up on someone that's and the paramedics and the advanced life support is not there yet, they're able to at least get somebody back from maybe not breathing to to be able to stabilize them until they get them to the hospital. So it's a really horrific problem, and we're going to do everything we can in the Florida legislature to fight it, because it's just that important.
And as we kind of move forward to, as a chair of the Commerce Committee, you oversee a lot. And one of the key factors that is here in Manatee County is Port Manatee. Port Manatee is certainly an economic multiplier. They continue to grow and develop new partnerships and outreach. Tell us a little bit about why you think not only the port is important, but what the state looks to for not only Port Manatee, but others, to help develop trade and outreach.
Sure, and the port, even my time in the legislature, I'm not taking credit for it, so don't get me wrong, has improved in its use and its activity dramatically, and we're very excited about that. One of the things in place in Florida is Enterprise Florida, and last year we had some negotiations back and forth, and we finally, I think, settled on something that's very, very sound, and we funded $85 million last year for jobs and infrastructure funds. So infrastructure, wouldn't be just specifically for one individual or one entity, but would support, a neighborhood or for instance, an infrastructure into the port in this case, where lots of businesses and lots of different entities would be impacted by it. So we'll continue to look at that. Ports and the traffic and the trade that comes through ports, I think, are critical for Florida and can be a great economic driver for our economy. So I'm really happy that Port of Manatee is in my district and doing so well, and I will continue to support their efforts, because they've done a phenomenal job there.
And it really does make a difference to this community to have that kind of thriving port going on out there.
Think about the jobs, to think about the jobs, the extra jobs that it created.
And they continue to develop new relationships, so those jobs can continue. I know one of the great organizations that's out there is Air Products, thriving engineering firm that does it. It's just growing by leaps and bounds.
Yeah, and in my term in the legislature, we've grown private sector jobs 1.5 million people. Part of that is because of folks like Air Products, excuse me, that came to Florida from another place because they liked they liked the port, they liked the environment, they liked the community.
Exactly.
And they created jobs that added to that 1.5 million new jobs number since 2010, which I think is phenomenal.
And hats off to Manatee County government and the EDC and the Chamber of Commerce for having that kind of effort to reach out and to help develop those business incentives. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and you participated in it, is recently you had the legislative delegation, I believe just a month or so ago, meet, and the wide variety of different organizations come and talk about what they're doing and their need and things. And on occasion, many people have said there's so many more requests than you could possibly do. And all of these organizations are worthwhile. They're doing good work. But you have to, as you see this come before you, look and say, well, we can only do so much.
Yeah, and back to what we talked about a little bit earlier with the budget. I mean, it is going to be a tight year. I sit and listen to these presentations, and every one of them sounds good. Every one of them sounds worthwhile. Every one of them sounds worthy of support. It's just sadly a matter of economics that we can only support so many. But my feeling is, since I've been there, since 2010, we've funded the things that need to be funded.
Right.
We've found ways to fund them. We've often say in our circles in Tallahassee, we have a spending problem, not a revenue problem. So $83 billion is a heck of a lot of money for a state budget. So we just need to focus on where we're spending money as a government that perhaps we don't need to, so we can free up some dollars for the things that are of great importance to our state and our communities. And I'm sure we'll be able to do that again this year.
And kind of refine, what those requests may be and what they can do. But it's always good because you and the delegation sit there and are very open to these organizations and what they bring and what they need, everything from the county down to, little nonprofit organizations.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very receptive environment that you create and welcome these people to discuss what their needs may be.
Well, that's our community, and that's the fabric of our community. So if we're not listening to them, shame on us. And I think we do, and sometimes you have to tell people we just can't get it done this year, but maybe next year. But overall, I think since I've been there, and probably before I was there, and certainly after I'm gone, legislators figure out ways to fund the things that are critical for their communities in the state, and I have no doubt we'll be able to do that again this year.
And Representative Boyle, if I may, obviously you've looked at a wide variety of things, and as you move forward into the upcoming year, are there issues that you want to personally take a look at and say, what can I do about this? What efforts can I put forward? What bills can I file that I want to move forward? And what are those? What may they be?
Well, we talked on opioid issue, which is I think probably my most passionate issue since I've been there. I come from the business world, so I've been interested in business ideas and additional. How do we grow jobs in Florida? How do we bring new people to Florida? How do we encourage expansion and opportunity? Education is critical, and while I don't think since I've been in the legislature, I've served on an education committee. I've been supportive and will continue to be, even after I'm gone, of choice for parents and students. Some students sadly get stuck in failing schools, and they're there from kindergarten through 12th grade, and they have literally no chance in society. So why not give these parents and give these students options? And I've been very supportive of those options. Still supporting strongly the public school system, which I think is vital to our state and to our student population. But everybody doesn't fit in that mold, and I think hopefully lots more are starting to recognize that. And there may be a school that would better suit someone. We were at AMI yesterday and saw the difference they're making in kids' lives that are failing in their traditional school, not because of school's problem, but just because of the kids have situations in life circumstances that they have to deal with. But here's an alternative to that. And these kids, I talked to 3 boys yesterday at AMI that were making D's and F's in school. Within a couple of months, they're making A's and B's at the AMI school, and then they're going to plug them back into a traditional school
Right.
with a new attitude, with a new mindset, with new focus, new purpose, and new goals. And those kids are going to be wildly successful in life. So that's what it's all about. So education is another critical component of what we do. And I'll continue to support that even as a former legislator.
Well, that's not any time soon. You've got till November of 2018 before that opportunity moves on. But as we wind down here a little bit, Representative Boyd, I'd like to give you the opportunity to kind of reflect, if you could, on those things that you found, not only in the legislation part of it, but as a legislature, of those things that you're most proud of that during your tenure that you've accomplished.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's hard to believe. Just 8 years ago or 7.5 years ago, we were sitting here talking about getting elected, and now I've been there. And so it's a little bittersweet. I'm looking forward to next November. I will have termed out, as our Constitution provides, for 8 years of service in the Florida legislature, and certainly understand that and am happy to obviously abide by that. But it's been a privilege and an honor to be there in the legislature and serving our community. I've met a lot of people that are really good people, both here and throughout the state, that are trying to do the right things for the right reasons. That's been a real honor. I've worked on some great issues. We've reformed automobile insurance and saved taxpayers money. We've put in some strict standards for charities that are taking money from people. We reformed elections and ethics. We've given taxpayers back money. We've created 1.5 million jobs. We've reduced debt by $9 billion as a state. Our state is the most fiscally sound state by reports in the country. And I haven't done that. I've been part of a team that's done that, and that's been really gratifying and rewarding to be part of that team that really has, I think, served this community and our state very well, and it's just been a privilege for me to be a small part of that.
Well, I must say, as a collective effort, you might not have been totally responsible, but you were with that leadership. And you were one of those individuals that always got the tough jobs, even when your first assignment in the committee, it was like, give it to Jim Boyd, he can get it done. And throughout your tenure there, you've always been given these great responsibilities, and because they know that you're kind of a can-do, will get it done, and you do this in a positive and a very constructive way. And if I must say, you bring people together, on both sides of the aisle, to work for a common good. And I know I've said it before, but I don't think anyone thinks of you as a politician. I think people think of you as a public servant, and you have really worn that mantle well, and you've served this community very well. And your last year in here, I'm sure you're going to get more and more accolades, and well-deserved accolades as well. And I want to thank you, Representative Boyd, for what you've done for this community, for what you've done for the state of Florida, because it's been exceptional. And even though you're not quite done yet, there's a lot of work left to be done. And we would welcome the opportunity in the future, in the months ahead, to sit down and talk with you as you move forward.
Well, hey, make no mistake. I still have till next November. I'm going to work hard until November because we still have work to do. But I've enjoyed it. It's been a great honor, and I'm looking forward to helping my successor, gain traction early and be successful in the legislature as well, because that's what matters for our communities. So it's been a lot of fun. And to your point about assignments, I kind of feel like that old commercial with the cereal where give it to Mikey, he'll eat it. I'm like, give it to Jim, he'll do it. I don't know, but
I think that's a really well put, because you have risen to every challenge that's been before you, and not only succeeded and made them successful, but welcome that opportunity and welcome the challenge. Manatee County is very fortunate, and been a long line of great legislatures that have come out of Manatee County. Edgar Price, who you knew and admired, Dan Miller, John McKay, and I think Jim Boyd is one of those individuals who, not only for his service and his ability, but what you've done for the citizens of Manatee County and for the state of Florida. And for that, sir, we thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us on this special edition of Up Close on METV.